given birth to my son, within my career, I found it really challenging in my 20s just to be a new mom. I also dealt with postpartum depression, which made it even harder to really understand how I could connect with him when my job was everything. And so it's, over the years, I've now I just have the guilt of when I have to travel. But it's interesting as I go around the world and see other countries to see how they respect, when they're pregnant in the workplace. I'm just really curious. I know it's a very personal question, but, can you share with us, your experience? You have three great kids, what that was like working in the tech industry?
Yeah, well, you almost have me at a loss because I think this is one that many people face. And when I talk to summits, specifically women in cloud summits and deny, a lot of them are really struggling even with, do I disclose that I'm pregnant?
Mhm.
And if I'm pregnant, then do I take the time off or do I return back to the workforce? Or what if I do? What happens to my skills? I mean, these are things that are all here and now. And so it's one that I think has hit me with three kids. A couple things. One, I think that, and I'm just going to be brutally honest, when I was early in career, I was really nervous to even say that I was pregnant
Yeah.
in my first job because I didn't know if that was going to hamper my career. I didn't know if I was going to be put on a hold. And, thankfully things has changed, quite a bit, both legally, obviously, and also I would just say the environment of which we're in, that's a little more celebrated than it was when I started. But I never wanted to give up my career. I wanted to be able to do both. And I had a lot of people that said you couldn't do both. You cannot be a successful mother and you cannot have a successful career. And so you need to choose. And that always made me so angry that I had to choose, which basically said I wasn't going to be good at one or the other. And that becomes a mom syndrome, I think, that carries with us to this day, which is the mom guilt, which is if I spend too much time at work, I'm neglecting my children. If I want to go to the child's baseball game, then I don't really care about, work because I'm in a meeting. And here's where I landed on this one, and then I'll get to international. It took me the first half of my career to be very confident in myself that I could do both and I was great at both. And the reality is that there is really nothing like work life balance, that you are going to shift your priorities when you need those priorities. And so I never missed a birthday, I never missed a sports game. If I had to travel internationally, I would get back to make sure that I was there for something. And I felt that at some point in my career, there were times where I would walk out of some of the biggest meetings at Microsoft because I knew my daughter's play was starting and I wasn't going to go past 6 o'clock, as an example. And so you have to have that confidence, I think, to be able to do that. But I encourage everyone to have that and even take the risk, because I guarantee you no one will remember it the next day except for yourself. So you're missing out on all these amazing opportunities because you're choosing one or the other, when the reality is you can't have both. And you're your hardest on yourself, for first of all. So then I've traveled for my whole career internationally, and I will just say that then becomes a much different challenge. Some cultures, of course, don't even really respect yet women being in a senior leadership position. And that is the dynamic when you come in and you're starting to lead a conversation and, just having to command the respect of a room in a culture where maybe that actually has to be male dominated, as an example. And that is one where I spent a lot of time making sure, one, respecting the culture, but also very clear that I was going to have a seat at the table.
Absolutely.
And, again, here I would just say, if you can't have a seat at the table, you didn't need to travel to that country. You should be able to own and claim why you're there, for sure. The other thing I would just say internationally is that some countries are very progressive and have incredible benefits, and some, again, like I said, mentioned, they're not necessarily so gracious. I have found through my time, I've been very open about my children. I talk about them in international settings. I've actually shopped with people from other countries for my little keychain or whatever I bring back to my kids, because I find that it makes you human. It makes you human. And I think it's really one of these things that, again, I think you're almost harder on yourself than if you are vulnerable and really talk about what your, sort of work and home life is. And I find really people in any country have been incredibly respectful. And it became a little bit of a running joke, was like, oh, we got to go get Gretchen's keychain for her kids. And by the way, my love sign, I think, is gifting, but it is not with my kids. So I think I always had this guilt, and I always had to bring them back a snow globe or a keychain from like wherever I traveled.
Snow globes right now.
Snow globes, yeah. Finally, my daughter's like, Mom, I have like 52 snow globes. Can we like change it up a little bit? But I will have to take my love sign list. But that was my way of saying, hey, I'm gone, but I want to bring a piece of something back that we can experience together. And so I think those are a couple little things that I've experienced. And I think for the listeners today, I would just really encourage, sometimes we're our worst enemy on trying to hide and cover what the reality of that situation is. And I would just say let it go, and be authentic, and people will really realize and recognize and oftentimes champion for you on that. So
No, it's so true. I'm almost too direct to a fault. And I remember in one of my interviews when I was pregnant, just blurting it out before I even introduced myself. I'm
good
like,
for you.
Yeah. So you don't want to interview me. I understand. They're looking at me like, oh, okay.
Hey, what? What?
But, it was just, I didn't know. I think that's a very valid point, that it's scary to take that chance, because they could have said sorry and, go on your merry way. But, for me, it just had to be part of who I am. And, you're absolutely right. I was in a country recently coaching and being the lead coach for, a very advanced technology. And while I was there, I was getting a lot of disrespect, and they kept asking for the gentleman to come over and coach them. And I finally said to them, I wasn't being invited by Microsoft to be your coach, to be your trainer, if I didn't know what I was talking about.
Right.
And so until I say something wrong, give me a chance. And it sort of took them back for a moment, but I earned that seat at the table.
You earn that seat at the table, and you got to take that seat at the table. And I think, we'll continue, with respect, but those cultural differences will occur. And I think it's important for you to make sure that, again, like I said, you need to take that seat, and you need to earn that seat at the table. For sure. And I'll just maybe one last thing for, we've talked a lot about women and, having children, whatever, but let me just say one thing for the males here too. I know it's the same challenge where I have a stigma that I have to be working all the time. And if I have to go home and pick up the kids from daycare, or I'm the person in charge of getting ready in the morning, that feels a little strange too. And so it's really been refreshing, in my opinion, to really see the work climate change, and the support, quite frankly, both in policy benefits and certainly just in the social climate support, all of the men. There's certainly single men, as well as, caregivers that have equal responsibility, or sometimes responsibility. And I appreciate that. And I think we have a long ways to go, and I recognize that, but I think we're on a really great path.
Yeah, I have newfound respect for the stay-at-home dad of my life, who I now have felt, all the things that have to get done to run a household. It was just so much more than I ever realized. And so I found myself today with my dog who's sick, in my old papoose from when Gus was a baby. That's my son, with my dog while I'm on a call typing. Like,
that's true balance, Laura. I'm just saying. There you go.
Somebody took a screenshot and sent it back to me. I'm like, okay, sorry. I didn't even realize I was on camera, but I'm glad everyone got to see this moment into my real life. So thank you so much, Gretchen, for being on here. I relate to you so much in these circumstances and stories, and I could gab on with you for days, as you know. So thank you.
Laura, thank you so much.